Well, good day. I'm just going to share, I guess, my favorite book. Now, I've mentioned it a million times before. I've probably read from it probably even more times than that. My favorite book is Also Sprach Zarathustra by Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche. I prefer the R.J. Hollingdale English translation. I actually enjoy a French translation, but geez, I was supposed to look up who it was, but I haven't. It's actually closest to the German. I fell in love with this book so much that I learned to translate the German so I could read it in German. Now I'm going to give you a little tip because you're among the very few who are either accidente falling on this, on accident falling on this content, or you're an early adopter. There's been many translations of Nietzsche's Zarathustra. But as I said before, because of how he writes, it's impossible to translate it. So what I've realized is what Zarathustra needs, Nietzsche's greatest book, what it needs is a skeleton key. So rather than just translating Zarathustra, I would like to do the skeleton key, because I argue, and follow me here, this is an idea I also have, of translating Zarathustra and publishing it without attribution, because again, it's in the public domain, but follow me here for a reason, to separate the propaganda and the baggage that's attached to Nietzsche himself and publish it as, well, I would say like Tibetans would call a terma text, right? Like a lost text, like a Carlos Castaneda sort of idea. Publish it without attribution, allow people to think it's like, a great self-help book. You could argue and be bombastic and say the greatest. But I'll just give you an example. I was showing to the wife how you really can't translate it because in the first two paragraphs, 2 lines, 3 lines that I'm going to read here, it's actually 2 lines, but 2 paragraphs. He mentions creativity, valuation, multiple times in multiple different words. Impossible to get across if not read in the German. But what's beautiful is this is why I love R.J. Hollingdale. You can equate it to the Bible, right? Some translations are done so that it reads better. Some don't mind how it reads and wants the idea to come across more. I like R.J. Hollingdale because the language is beautiful, but it also gets the idea across a little bit better than most. And so I'm going to read from the first section of Nietzsche's Also Sprach Zarathustra. It's of the 1,001 goals. And again, even goals. When you look at the German word, it's more than just goals. It's also another reference to what we value. Zarathustra has seen many lands and many peoples. Thus, he has discovered the good and evil of many peoples. Zarathustra has found no greater power on earth than good and evil. Right? So you pick up the power reference, right? Macht, which will come up later with his will to power, Willen Macht. But when he talks about Zarathustra has seen many lands and many peoples, and he has discovered the good and evil of many peoples, what he actually found is he evaluated that peoples had within them good and evil. So we missed a little bit in the German in the next paragraph. No people could live without evaluating, but if it wishes to maintain itself, it must not evaluate as its neighbor evaluates, right? So individual evaluation, but there's a whole line missing where he talks about, again, evaluating what is valuable. Much that seemed good to one people seemed shame and disgrace to another. Thus I found. Again, in German, that's I've evaluated. I've deemed that good to one person was shame and disgrace to another, right? Beyond good and evil, or transvaluation of all values. And he goes on, he says, I found, again, I've evaluated. I found much that was called evil in one place, was in another decked with purple honors, right? Purple being the royal color. One neighbor never understood another. His soul was always amazed at his neighbor's madness and wickedness, right? A table of values hangs over every people. I love this because actually he used a word, a form of the word that alludes to something else, right? This table of values hanging over every people's heads. Behold, it is the table of its overcomings. Behold, it is the voice of its will to power. What it accounts, hard it calls, praiseworthy. And again, this is something here, hard. The translation for the word hard, I would maybe translate it as severe or sincere or precious, even again, right? And it calls praiseworthy, holds on high esteem. And I continue, what it accounts indispensable and hard, again, that German word, and indispensable. Again, these are all synonyms for the same idea that something that has great value, has great gravitas, great importance, right? We place great value, great meaning upon it, right? And he goes on and he says, what it accounts indispensable and hard it calls good, and that which relieves the greatest need, the rare and hardest of all, it glorifies as holy. And what's missing is, he says, pressed, this word that means glorifies, actually sounds like priest, right? So the holy. But again, priest, going back to the Greek, like praetor, someone who speaks, right? So that again, an idea of acting, or speaking, or manifesting your will, being the most holy. And he goes on and says, whatever causes it to rule and conquer and glitter, again, this idea of value and preciousness, to the dread and envy of its neighbor, that it accounts the sublimest, the paramount, the evaluation and the meaning of all things. Truly, my brother, if you only knew a people's need and land and sky and neighbor, you could surely divine the law of its overcomings. Again, Uber is an overcoming, but it's also going through. And why is it upon this ladder that it mounts towards its hope? You should always be the first and outrival all others. Your jealous soul should love no one except your friend. This precept made the soul of a Greek tremble. In following it, he followed his path to greatness. Right? Pneuma, right? This idea of spirit, soul, being, and breath. I continue to speak the truth and to know how to handle bow and arrow. This seemed both estimable and hard to that people from whom I got my name, a name which is both estimable and hard to me. So there's a note on that. That's let's see here, 10. This will be in reference to the name. I believe the idea of Zarathustra. Apologies here. Yes, he's referring to the Persians who named Zarathustra the two following the Jews and the Germans as he carries on here. It says to honor father and mother, right? So his also a reference to his father being German, his mother being Polish. And to do their will even from the roots of the soul. I love that in German, actually. He goes on, another people hung this table of overcoming over itself. In this idea of hanging a table of overcoming over itself, and became mighty and eternal with it. To praise loyalty for the sake of loyalty, to risk honor and blood, even in evil and dangerous causes. Another people mastered itself with such teaching, and thus, mastering itself, it became pregnant and heavy with great hopes. Truly, men have given themselves all their good and evil. Truly, they did not take it. They did not find it. It did not descend to them as a voice from heaven. Man first implanted values into things to maintain himself. He created the meaning of things, a human meaning. Therefore, he calls himself man, that is, the evaluator. Evaluation is creation. Hear it, you creative men. Valuating is itself the value and jewel of all valued things. Only through evaluation is there value, and without evaluation, the nut of existence would be hollow. Hear it, you creative men. A change in values. That means a change in the creators of values. He who has to be a creator always has to destroy. Peoples were the creators at first, only later were individuals creators. Indeed, the individual himself is still the latest creation. Once the peoples hung a table of values over themselves, the love that wants to rule and the love that wants to obey created together such tables as these. Joy in the herd is older than joy in the ego, and as long as the good conscience is called herd, only the bad conscience says I. Truly the cunning, loveless ego that seeks its advantage in the advantage of many, that is not the origin of the herd, but the herd's destruction. It has always been creators and loving men who created good and evil. Fire of love and fire of anger glow in the names of all virtues. Zarathustra has seen many lands and many peoples. Zarathustra has found no greater power on earth than the works of these loving men. These works are named good and evil. Truly, the power of this praising and blaming is a monster. Tell me, who will subdue it for me, brothers? Tell me, who will fasten fetters upon the 1,000 necks of this beast? Hitherto there have been 1,000 goals, for there have been 1,000 peoples. Only fetters are still lacking for these 1,000 necks. The one goal is still lacking. Yet tell me, my brothers, if a goal for humanity is still lacking, is there not still lacking humanity itself? Thus spoke Zarathustra. One goal, one tribe, humanity. I wrote humanity as a goal, right? Camus said there's only one question, that of philosophical suicide. If you don't embody your agency, if you don't embrace your individuality, if you forgo your free will, you're left hollow, if not worse, stuffed row upon row. Also sprach Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche also spoke Zarathustra. Freely available on Gutenberg and LibriVox. I highly recommend reading and listening to the audiobook. Makes it much easier. Also recommend that you can actually look at the original German on Gutenberg as well. But review. There is no better book for self-help. What I just read you is really no different than what inspired Carl Jung's idea of synchronicity. This idea that we are the creator of meaning, of value. We are the evaluator. So it is within our perception, our perspective, that we see what is of value, what is, well, hope, a big part of that, right? Because the path you follow with devotion, commitment, and confidence is what you hope. It is what you face. And I've mentioned this before. It's, as I said, synchronicity to Carl Jung. It's man is the evaluator, the Schätzen, to Nietzsche. It's in Joyce's Ulysses, when he writes, yes, 1,000 times yes. That's Nietzsche as well. Yes. His eternal return is amor fati. The individuation of Jung is no different than Nietzsche. He said, we are a path, we are a rope, we are a bridge to what we can become. We are not we're not the goal, in a sense. This is why when I mentioned, we translate that German word Wille, or pardon me, I'm not thinking straight right now, but the German word for goal in this particular chapter means more than just goal. It also means, again, what you hold dear, what you value. So your path, right? Your faith, your meaning, your hope, your journey, right? If you're acting as an agent with free will, as he says, creating for us a tablet, right? Because he's speaking both of an idea of, because when you read it in German, it speaks not just of a tablet, as if, being handed down from on high, but it also speaks to carving upon that tablet, maintaining a record in a sense, right? Because as he says in this very short chapter, we are an evolution and kind of a constant, what would you call it, project. I guess, yeah, it's, again, one of the German translations for this idea. Even the German word for goal in this case, a synonym would be project, right? It's crazy. But this is why people are told how deep Nietzsche is, because you could read, as Carl Jung said when he spoke about Zarathustra, that you could read this book for 50 years. As Confucius said about the I Ching, if another 50 years were granted him, he would spend it studying the I Ching. You could do the same with many novels. As Carl Jung said, he hoped to write his Red Book in the same vein, as something that could be studied for generations. And Nietzsche is exactly that. But don't be deterred, because it can be read as a very simple self-help guide. and a very complicated one.